Welcome to Belief Busters Podcast, where we change the world one belief at a time. True transformation happens when we question if the beliefs we hold are of truth, or simply someone else's belief that we have internalized as our own. I'm your host, Rev. Cherie Taylor-Jones, and I'm glad you could join us on the journey. We are in for a really juicy conversation. We have Justin FAERMAN and KNECHTEL. They are the founding team of the Flow Consciousness Institute, which is a research body dedicated to understanding the mechanics of consciousness, reality, human potential, and the relationship between them, and using these insights to develop highly practical tools and trainings for the betterment of humanity and all sentient life. So you can understand why I really asked them to be here. Justin and Jackie are pioneers in the art and science of living in flow consciousness. They run high-level training programs worldwide, teaching people from all walks of life how to bring their lives and businesses fully into flow and create exponential growth and success from a place of effortlessness and ease. Isn't that what we all want? Effortlessness and ease. Whew. Their work has been covered in Fast Company and Forbes magazine, and they currently travel the globe conducting research and hold talks, workshops, and trainings on living in ongoing states of flow, applying intuition in life and business, and creating success without the hustle and grind. And you can learn more at their website, which is flowconsciousnessinstitute.com. Welcome, guys.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, the listeners, you are going to be in for a huge treat. I know that I've been asking and really encouraging you to look at your beliefs and change them if they're no longer working for you, if they're no longer in alignment with divinity, with oneness. And it's a big process to do that work. And these lovely individuals are going to help us figure out how we can do it in a way that's not so stressful for our mind, for our body, for our consciousness. Ooh. Are you up for that challenge? Because that's a big order.
Yeah,
we're all about it.
Yeah.
All right, great. So what got you into this business of working with consciousness in the first place? How'd you get here?
Yeah, well, Jackie and I both had our own individual paths to that, which our own individual paths led us to each other eventually. And so I'll speak briefly to mine. But for me, I was going through a pretty hard time in my life in my late teens, and I was depressed, and I was just kind of mentally and emotionally a mess, not in a good place, in a period of self-destruction and just searching for happiness, truly searching for happiness and all the things that we crave. But I just wasn't getting the results I wanted with all of the things that society was telling me, medication, all these different things. And so after I had kind of exhausted the list of options that are normally served up to someone in that circumstance, I, decided to give personal development a try, holistic health and wellness, personal development, meditation, inner work. And that did it. Totally changed my life. Within 2 weeks, I went from being the most unhappy, unhealthy, and depressed I'd ever been to the happiest, healthiest, in the best mental and emotional state that I'd ever been. And that for me was a really profound experience. Anything that could take me from one extreme to the other extreme in such a short period of time, I knew that there was something here. And so that was about almost 17 years ago for me. And so I've dedicated, all my waking energy really to going as far as I can on that path. And that's what led me to Flow and eventually led me to Jackie.
Attest to that. It's from the moment he wakes up.
All day, every day.
Yeah. Yeah, my path was similar but different. I grew up in a family with a lot of addiction, a lot of depression, and I inherited a lot of really unhealthy patterns codependence, overworking, perfectionism, people pleasing, just kind of all of this lot of things that were keeping me suffering. And I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder at one point. And when I was in high school, I started trying to find my way out of that and really make sure that it all stopped with me, and started studying psychology and Buddhism and Eastern wisdom traditions, and really trying to find a way out of my suffering. Committed myself from a very young age, and then was the death of my brother in 2009 that really accelerated things. And I was at also a particularly low point in my life. I was chronically burnt out and got an autoimmune condition from giving and giving and giving of myself and not taking care of my needs. When my brother died, I really had an opportunity to reflect on my life and make some changes. And I ended up leaving my life as I knew it, doing a solo trip around the world, and ended up at a retreat that really changed my life and gave me a new framework, a new mindset for understanding life that became a lot of the foundation for the work that we're doing now. For me, that was almost 12 years ago to the day, and
Wow.
been a constant learning and growing path of my own healing that led me to want to help others. And so my brother's death wasn't in vain. So I really feel like he died to give others life.
Oh, that's beautiful. How do we move from this state of, here are the beliefs that I've been indoctrinated in, here's my family of origin, here's what they told me, all from a place of trying to get me to be successful in the systems that they know, right? I mean, for the most part, no parent is like trying to wreck their person's life, right? They're doing it from a place of love and trying to do the best that they can.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. So how do we then give ourselves permission to do this work? And how do we support ourselves while we're doing this work?
Permission is something that you get to decide, that this is really, you interfacing with yourself at the deepest levels. You don't need anybody else's permission. It's up to you, and you can start as soon as you're ready. I mean, there's nothing to wait. The only thing that's required is that you change your mind, or you make a decision to commit to this path. What people really need on that process, I think, is a framework or an understanding of the territory that they're navigating. Because really, this is in the domain of the psyche and really the subconscious, which can be kind of a murky area. And so having a path, having tools, having some guidance to get you oriented is really, really valuable as you go through that process.
Yeah, I want to add to your point too, that this is not about blaming other people for what they've done to us. This is really taking back our power and taking responsibility for how we see life and see the world and see ourselves, and really making the implicit explicit, all of these beliefs and perceptions, judgments, biases that we've taken on unconsciously. We get to then excavate them and bring them to the surface and bring awareness, because whatever's unconscious, not in our awareness, is going to be dictating and shaping our life and our behavior.
Yes.
So we really get to make a choice, a conscious choice, to really start to uncover and unpack all of those things that we've taken on, either, inherited from our ancestors epigenetically, or, when we're a young child, we're like a sponge, just being imprinted with all of these different beliefs and perceptions of the world.
Right.
And through our personal experiences, through media, culture, religion, society, all of these different ways, we've taken on these unconscious perceptions. And so it's really in our best interest to take our power back and start to excavate our psyche and our consciousness.
I like that. I like the idea of taking our power back. But what I'm finding when I'm coaching folks or supporting them, there is this innate fear when they start this excavation process. And the level of uncomfortability sometimes drives people back to, I don't need to look at it. I don't need to deal with it.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, this is very common. And it's, There's a lot of reasons for it, but one of the primary ones is because really it's because of fear, and the psyche takes on fears to protect us ultimately.
Yep.
And it takes on beliefs to protect us. Like you said, our parents are doing the best they can. They're trying to teach us how to be successful, but not usually with the right beliefs. And so,
because they didn't have them. And
yeah,
that's the thing,
Yes.
hurt people, and everyone's doing the best they can with what they've been given. And so most people, this is not stuff that's taught in school. We're not given these tools to go through life with yet.
yeah, yeah. And so the fear is there to protect us. And so when we go into the fear, first of all, it's uncomfortable. People don't know how to navigate their emotions. They don't know how to navigate fear. And so when they feel fear their whole life, they've been overwhelmed by these powerful emotions without tools. And so they're used to running away from them because that's the coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So having a tool is really helpful. So you feel like you're equipped for the task. On the flip side of that, the fears, the limiting beliefs, even though they're actually creating struggle and suffering in our life, they've become our identity.
Yes.
Right? People identify with them. And so when you start to go in there and like rework things, if you don't have a new identity to step into, it can be really scary because, our whole concept of self is based on our beliefs and our emotions. And when you start deleting those or erasing those, the psyche feels like it's dying.
Yeah.
And that's overwhelming.
Yeah, and not just that too, it's the way our nervous system's been imprinted. So even though a pattern may be unhealthy or toxic, it's familiar, it's what we know. And so for most people, and this is what we're seeing especially at this time, is uncertainty is far scarier than staying in our unhealthy patterns and behaviors. So not knowing what's on the other side, we often unconsciously choose to stay in these patterns that even though we know they're not serving us.
So my mission is, how do we support people in doing this work so it's not that scary, and when they do get scared, there are tools and techniques that they can use to ground them in a way that then allows them to take the next leap.
Yeah, and I'd say too, having support along the journey is so helpful and so beneficial, because it can be really daunting to go through and pick apart everything you thought you knew. So having a coach, a therapist, a guide, a healer, a friend, a book, whatever it is, or all of the above to support you on the journey is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I remember, I think I was in my mid-20s when I started this work, and I had a therapist and we were doing some really deep work. And initially I thought I was going to die. I mean, that's kind of, the feeling that came up. And in a sense, it is a death, right? Because you're dying to the old. Yes, to create the new. But it's terrifying when you're starting that process, because like you said, you don't know what you're becoming. There is no take this breadcrumb and then you're going to turn into an eagle. There is none of that. What I would love is if you would share some techniques with us that can support people as they are starting to be willing to look at some of their beliefs that are no longer working for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about tools to find beliefs and emotions, first of all, because that's important. And then we can share a nice entry level practice. It's very powerful, but still pretty simple to get started with. It can help people to start to release fear, in particular fear and stuck emotions and shame, anxiety, anger, etc. Because that's really what's coming up for people at this time in history a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is most people don't have tools, so it's easier to numb out, to avoid dealing with it, to escape, to watch Netflix, to drink, to gossip, talk on the phone, whatever it is. There's healthy and unhealthy ways of dealing with emotions, but most people aren't given a skill set to do that, and so they choose the unhealthier one. So today we're going to give you a powerful tool, but we can also teach you to really start to identify your beliefs by questioning your thoughts and getting excited when you have an emotional trigger, or you feel your nervous system being activated and you're upset about something and you have all of these emotions swirling. Instead of wanting to run from them, getting excited because you know there's something beneath it that wants to be healed and
Woohoo.
released. And
Yes.
so, yeah, it's like a treasure hunt, and you know there's
Yeah.
like a nugget of gold at the bottom. And when you're in an activated emotional state, you get to question why you're having that emotional experience or why you're stuck in this particular thought loop. So we teach a really simple but powerful mindful questioning practice that can help you excavate and get to the root of what those beliefs are.
The first step is just basic mindfulness, right? So if we're completely disconnected from how we're feeling and what we're thinking, and it's just running the show, and we're not even, aware of what's going on there, yeah, then good luck trying to figure out, what's happening and what
Yeah.
to do with it. So the first step is just basic mindfulness. So, make a habit, set a practice, just do it for a week, even a day is enough, but like set a practice of being mindful of your thoughts, paying attention to your thoughts. Just as you go throughout the day, just turn your focus inward as much as you can and start to pay attention to what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And when you notice a limiting thought come up, a negative thought, any kind of judgment on yourself or other people, any kind of unpleasant, uncomfortable emotion,
Right.
don't just steamroll through it. Stop and start to ask yourself questions and start to try and identify what's happening, right? So sometimes it's obvious, maybe it's clear that, you're going on a date with somebody and you're feeling a lot of anxiety, right? And you're feeling this insecurity. And so you can label that you have anxiety or insecurity. And other times, it's more like you have a negative thought, like, maybe you went for a job interview and you didn't get it. And then you have the thought, man, nothing ever works out for me, right? And so anytime you have any kind of like negative mental or emotional experience, you want to start questioning it with these three really powerful questions. And what these questions do is they help you start to excavate the subconscious and to drill down and find the root cause of whatever's causing that thought or emotion. And it usually becomes very clear what it is, like fear of not being loved, or a fear of being in poverty, or whatever it is. And as you start to get clear on those things, then you can start to use these practices we're going to teach in a minute to go through that.
Yeah. So for example, if someone you text or sent an email doesn't respond to you for 3 days, that's enough to send people into a tailspin.
Absolutely.
And you don't know why. And what we tend to do as human beings is try to make up reasons why. And so I must have said something wrong. They must not like me. I'm bad. Meanwhile, their grandmother's in the hospital or something, and
Yes.
you're just making it all about you. So really starting to ask the questions, what am I making this mean about me? Or what must I believe in order to be having this thought or this emotional experience? And really starting to drill down. You could keep asking why am I having this thought? And then when you get that answer, why am I having that? And just keep going down until you get to something that feels like it's deep. And so our initial reactions to things are usually piled on top of a mountain of unresolved, unprocessed wounds. And so we think, the thing that's happening in the moment is what it's about, but it's really about all the other things beneath it that we didn't get to.
Yep.
And so we encourage you to really dig deep. And so what am I making this mean about me? And keep going, keep asking until you get to something that feels like I'm not lovable.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy. I don't belong. Some of these like deep core fears and beliefs that, are usually the most insidious ones that are impacting people.
Yeah. And you'll know when you get there, because you'll feel
You'll
it,
feel
like,
it.
whoa, like, you'll have this kind of
That's what I've been avoiding.
breakthrough moment where it's like, oh man, whoa. That's what you want to take and then bring into this process. And for this technique that we're going to teach is really about emotions specifically. Every limiting belief you have will have a corresponding emotional response. So just pay attention to, what you're feeling if you come across a belief, but you might also just come across a fear too. Usually it's pretty easy to identify a fear. And so once you have that, once you know what fear it is that you're working with, or maybe it's anxiety or shame, whatever the intense emotion is, that's when you're going to want to start using this practice.
All right.
And if you use this practice right after you did the mindful questioning, where Jackie just talked about some of the questions, the emotion will be right there. It'll be right on the surface, which is perfect. Because that's the first part of the practice, is that you do need to bring you want to call up the emotion as much as possible and activate that pattern in your psyche and your nervous system, because that's what we're going to reset. We're going to reset the body's response to it, the nervous system response to it. In order to do that, we need to bring up the pattern.
Feeling, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a note, when we say negative emotional experience or negative emotional state, there isn't actually a positive or a negative emotional. That's how we're interpreting it. And so, emotions are just energy moving in our body. And based on our beliefs and our perceptions about it, the narrative that we create about it will give us this experience of, is it positive or negative? And really, all of it is just information. It's telling us something deeper. And we say negative emotions, with that caveat.
I appreciate that because as humans, I say we're human making meaning machines, That's
Exactly.
what we do. And we've been indoctrinated what's good, what's bad, what's an okay feeling, what's not an okay feeling. And if it's not an okay feeling, we do our damnedest not to feel that feeling. So I love that you give the caveat of that, we're talking about energy, and all feelings are, I like to say all feelings are of God. All feelings are acceptable. Yes.
Exactly. And that's the thing is when you're in the acceptance of all of them and welcoming all of them, that's what ultimately allows them to release. And so welcoming them without judgment, like that Rumi's House poem, and really just allowing them to be there without judging them as wrong or bad or something that we don't want to be experiencing, is the way to meet them. And because when we're willing to go into the depths of our sorrow, our pain, our sadness, our grief, it unlocks and opens up and makes available so much more bliss and joy and freedom on the other side.
Yeah. Everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of your limiting beliefs and fears and your emotions. That's it. It's like people say like, well, I want to be rich, or I want to have my soulmate. The way that reality works is like, okay, cool. It tries to give you that. But what happens is that the fastest way for you to get it is to get out of your own way. So oftentimes you'll get triggered. The limiting beliefs, the emotional blocks that are preventing you from having that thing will get triggered, so that you can release them. That's the fastest path, And so it's not uncommon when people set these big intentions or these visions or set these big goals and they start to go about them, that they encounter these things because the way that the psyche works and the way that reality works is like, okay, you can have anything you want, but it's all you and you. This is called the neurosomatic emotional release. And this is an entry-level version of some of the more advanced practices that we teach in our flow mastery training. And this is it's simplified, but it's still very powerful. And this is based on a lot of research that we've done, and a lot of research that a lot of brilliant people have done into the way that the mind and body interact. We can play with these different systems that are going on there and reset them in a way that's more advantageous for us. So basically, like we were saying before, you want to call up the emotion that you want to release.
And sometimes it's right there present. So you don't even have to bring it up. It's something that you're actively sitting in.
Right, exactly. You can do this proactively. Like if you just got some time on your hands and you want to make some moves in life, then you can do some excavation or try and find something, or you can do it we call symptomatically, which is when the emotion presents itself,
Now you can work through this technique.
Yeah, then you can use the technique.
Nice.
And so basically what happens is when you're feeling fear or anxiety or shame or anger, whatever it is, what that is it's a conditioned response to something in your life, some experience in your life. You have a Pavlovian conditioning where when you experience the stimuli, your body reacts in a certain way to keep you safe, usually with one of these emotions. And what's happening in the body is it goes into a fight or flight response. Or it goes into anger, or it goes into some level of negative emotional state, and that's just a reaction in your nervous system, literally a neurological wiring in your brain that's triggered. It's like a switch that gets triggered, and so it's a conditioned response. And so we can decondition that response by doing things that help reset our body's response to that stimuli. We can actually change it and help release that deep-seated emotional block. And when we do that, next time we have the experience, or next time we have the thought, instead of going into the conditioned negative emotional response, because we've been doing this technique and resetting the way our nervous system reacts, we go into a calm response. We go into a centered response. And when that happens, the fear is gone. If you're reacting with calm and peace, the fear is no longer there. And now you have the ability to change your mind and to make different decisions and move your life forward.
Correct.
Yeah. And there's a certain amount of fear that you want to have, and that's not going to be taken away by this. It's like our brains evolved in a way to protect us and to keep the species going. So if you're running out into the middle of the street and, a huge truck is coming, you're going to want to have a fear response. The issue is, 98% of our fear is psychological.
Correct.
And so like Justin was saying, these conditioned responses. So it's not, anything to do with these survival fears, more of these conditioned psychological fears.
Right. The key to this is that when we go into fight or flight, we react from the sympathetic nervous system. This is what people commonly associate with being stressed out or fearful or anxious. And so what we want to do instead is start to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is rest, relax, rejuvenate. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by stimulating our vagus nerve and just generally sending calming signals into the brain and the body. And so a really easy but powerful way to do that is by massaging the back of your neck, your brain stem. Basically, if you feel on the back of your back, there's a big bony protrusion right back there at the base of your neck. That's your C7 vertebrae.
Yep.
And that's the bottom of the area that we're going to be massaging. And the top of it is really just where the base of your skull starts. You can feel that bone there.
There's an indentation.
Yeah. And so just gently.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. So there's a couple bones that help us find the lower and upper limits. And what we're doing is we're just gently massaging that back area. And if you're listening to this and you're already starting to do it with us, you're probably feeling pleasurable sensations already going through your body. And it's nice, right? It's like getting a massage. And what this does is sends calming signals into our nervous system. And all the nerves in your body pass through this area right here. So you're literally giving all of your nerves a massage, sending calming signals in. And when you do this while you're calling up the fear at the same time, or the anxiety, it actually works to recondition that response. The Pavlovian, effect is basically when every time a dog was eating, food, they would ring a bell.
correct.
And even when the food wasn't there, they would ring the bell and the dog would start salivating.
Yes.
So we're basically doing the same thing in our bodies, where when the fear comes up, we input calming signals with this process right here. And so every time we feel fear and anxiety, we start to put calming signals in, and then it has the same response where it actually creates new neural pathways that the body now has calming signals associated with that fear. And if you keep doing it over time, what happens is the calming signals completely replace the fight or flight signal.
Yeah.
Built out entirely new neural pathways that are reinforcing this new way of being, which is calm, centered, not afraid. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the first piece of the practice, is massaging the back of the neck. And then we incorporate the breath. And the breath is one of the most potent tools that we have to regulate our nervous system. It's free, it's accessible. You can do it anywhere, anytime. And really by working with deep rhythmic breathing and really breathing deep into the belly, that's also going to stimulate the vagus nerve and that parasympathetic relaxation response. So as you're massaging up and down the back of your neck from that indentation at the top to the bony protrusion at the bottom, you want to be taking deep
breaths. Yeah.
Deep breath. So deep inhale and then exhale and prolong the exhalation. And as you're exhaling, the more vibration you can bring to it in the form of just making a sound, some vocal toning or humming, that's also going to input those signals to the vagus nerve and really stimulate this calming, healing response. So it's just massaging the back of the neck, breathing in deeply, exhale with a sigh or a sound. Keep repeating that.
Yeah.
And you do that for about a minute or two, and you'll start to feel this energy dissipate. The charge that was previously there will start to dissolve and will be replaced with relaxation, with calm, with presence, with love. And it's such a powerful and simple practice that you can do anywhere, anytime, in the moment. We said symptomatically, if you're experiencing an emotional trigger, or proactively going through and calling up a time that, last week your partner said this, or didn't take out the trash, or whatever it was that, just got you worked up. You can start to process that and move that energy.
Yeah. And what you'll find too is when you start, because you're pulling up the whatever the emotion is, it might feel kind of intense. Maybe it's maybe a scale of 1 to 10, maybe it feels like a 10 or a 9 or an 8 or something. And then as you start to do this process for a minute or two, what you'll notice is that you'll feel the fear, the anxiety, stress, whatever it is, lowering and lowering and lowering, to the point where oftentimes in the very first minute it'll go away completely. Sometimes if it's a really big charge or there's a lot of emotion there, you may need to just keep with it for a few minutes. You can do it multiple times in a row too. So after a couple minutes, you just stop, take a couple deep breaths, check in, see how you're feeling. If it's a little bit more energy there, then you can keep going and do another round. Sometimes the emotion will shift. Like maybe you started with fear and then you'll discover that there's sadness there as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's layers. There's oftentimes layers. And so you get through the fear and then you're like, oh, now I'm feeling sadness. Okay, do it again for sadness. And you keep going until you feel in a centered, neutral, clear place, or as close to that as you can get. And that's basically the process in a nutshell. Call up the emotion, let yourself feel it, really let it come up, and then start doing the neck rubbing, and then do the deep breathing with any toning. If you're in public, maybe you keep the toning a little bit lower. It's up to you. Some pretty interesting stuff on the subways in my day.
I bet.
Yeah. And you just stay with it for a couple minutes, and then you just check in and you keep going until you feel clear.
Yeah. And we invite you to check in, like on a scale of 1 to 10, when you start the process, and feel what that intensity is of whatever that emotion is. So maybe you're starting with a 4, maybe it's a 9, maybe it's a 10, really tracking what the intensity is when you start. And then as you move through it, notice what it's shifting to. And then just keep checking in as you do, at a minute. Where is it now? Okay, it's at a 6. I'm going to keep going. And then just keep, doing the process over and over until it dissipates into, a 2 or ultimately a 0.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing this technique, because listeners, I did this with them virtually. And I have to tell you, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm okay. And it works. It works, my friends. And it works in a really short period of time. I'm so glad that you mentioned it was like a 1 minute or 2 minutes. And it was, I was probably at a 9 with that emotion, and it dropped down to like a 3. And I was just like, woohoo. It was a shortcut. It was fabulous.
Well, it's bringing you into the now moment too, because so often when we're in anxiety, we're future tripping and making up all these imagined scenarios about what could happen. And, when we're depressed, we're ruminating over what happened in the past. And so when you're doing this process, it's bringing you into presence and really just being in the now moment and just being with what's there. And so often that is enough to just allow it to dissolve.
I agree. And for those of you who are meditators and you get sometimes you're in the thinking thing and it just doesn't dissipate, this is also a really great technique to use for that, to allow yourself to just kind of center and be present with what is. So both of those, yeah. Woo-hoo. Thank you for sharing that with our listeners. Now, before you go, is there anything that you feel like you want to make sure that listeners get this from this one conversation that we have?
Yeah. I would say, just to know that it's a process when you engage this work. I think sometimes people go, okay, cool, I'm going to do this technique. I'm going to go straight for my biggest fear, and then my life is going to be perfect. And it's like, your life will get better proportionally to the impact that fear was having on you. But the psyche is deep. There's a lot to work through, and it's possible to make extreme progress and really transform your life, but it requires consistency. It requires you to, maintain that inner mindfulness, and to find things and to really commit to the journey. It's the most incredible journey you'll ever go on. that will pay you more beauty and abundance and ease and self-love, anything you want, it will be given to you on this journey, but it requires you to stick with it. So just know that as you're getting into it, you might be surprised sometimes at how many emotions are there, and you're just like, I can't believe it's still going. But that's, just stay with it. It's one of the most valuable uses of your time that you could have. And it really allows your life to become effortless. And every time you go with it in and you do a minute of work internally, it's worth hours of work externally. So, this is a very, very leveraged practice.
And that's the thing, is once you start to experience the shifts, like you were saying, just in that 1 to 2 minutes, when you start to feel the lightness in your body, the lightness in your nervous system, the freedom that it creates, you're going to want to keep doing this. It's not going to be a slog to then go and be like, oh, I have to, go and do my inner work, because you experience the shifts, you experience the changes and the dynamics in your relationships, because you're not holding a charge anymore. So there's nothing for people to react to. And so your relationships start to change, and your whole world starts to shift. And so it becomes like, wow, I'm excited to do this. And, as things come up for me, it's like, great, I get to, it's like a video game. I get to advance to the next level.
Now, how do you work with people? In what ways, and how could they get in contact with you to do that work?
One of the core ways it's accessible for anybody anywhere on the planet at any time is through our Flow Mastery training. And this is our flagship, online training, where we basically take people through our whole methodology that includes, a deep dive into all the different techniques we teach for clearing and limiting beliefs and healing emotions, like we were doing today, and reprogramming in, the empowered flow enhancing new identity that's going to lock you into, much more expansive and abundant reality. And then also all these other things that we didn't talk about, that really allow you to live in flow at super high levels and experience peak states of consciousness, health, wealth, impact, spiritual connection, all these different things. We do, in-person trainings with people, conditions in the world allowing. Yes. And we work with companies and corporations and help them bring their teams as well into deep levels of flow.
And I take it that your website, flowconsciousnessinstitute.com, is the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. All right. I can't tell you what a joy this has been for me. And I know my listeners are going to be using this technique. I see it. I'm visualizing that everyone that listens to this starts this process, because it really is a game changer as you're starting to say, I deserve to be my divine self in the world. So thank you for being here.
Our absolute pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Our Belief Buster listeners, we're so appreciative that you are here. And it's our honor to bring guests of this caliber to you to really help and support you as you take the plunge in creating the life that you deserve to thrive, to live in abundance and prosperity. See you next time on the flip side. If you are enjoying these conversations about assessing your belief systems and how to transform outdated beliefs, then please subscribe and give us a positive review. To support this podcast and its transformative work, you can also become a sponsor for as little as $5 a month. You can reach Rev Cherie at info@beliefbusterspodcast.org. To continue on this journey of evolution, you can also get my book, Turning Your Why into Why Not, at Amazon or any other bookstores, which gives you practical tools to do this work. See you next time on the flip side.